This, I would like to invite Dr. Gayatri, who is the Chief of Orbit Oculoplasty and Ocular Oncology Services from Arvind Eye Care Systems, Pondicherry, to discuss on the essential topic that is benign eyelid lesions. On to you, Doctor. Before we start, I'm sure all of you are aware about the duration of your talk. So Dr. Anand Sethi would inform you all just 1 minute before your talk is to get concluded. And please try your best to wind up in that 1 minute so that we have good discussions as we have great experts here. Thank you.
Good evening, one and all. I thank AOS ARC for this wonderful opportunity. I'm here to give an overview of the benign lid lesions. I'll be going through the benign lesions in these headings. The most common is the chalazion. This is a sterile lipogranulomatous inflammation of the meibomian gland presenting as a firm, painless, tender nodule. It can cause astigmatism as it can compress over the cornea if it's large. And as we all know, lipid material is the culprit. It irritates and provokes the chronic lipogranulomatous inflammation. It can be associated with posterior blepharitis, acne rosacea, and seborrheic dermatitis. Though the treatment is conservative if it's less than 6 weeks duration, it needs an incision curettage or intralesional steroids if it's longer. And not to forget, it can a recurrent chalazion can be a great masquerader of sebaceous gland carcinoma. The commonest infectious lesion being hordeolum, be it hordeolum externum or an hordeolum internum, presenting as the eyelid swelling, single or multiple, sometimes may need systemic antibiotics also. Yet another common infection is a pox virus infection, that is molluscum contagiosum, a typical umbilicated white pink nodule filled with the cheesy material. In AIDS patient, it can be confluent and can be 30 to 40 lesions per lid. And it is one of the common reasons for a follicular conjunctivitis that is not getting treated with a standard treatment. Though the diagnosis is usually clinical, for the sake of PGs, molluscum bodies has to be remembered in the histopathological examination. Herpes simplex is common in children, HSV1, presenting as a vesicle which can crop and burst within few days, whereas varicella zoster, that is herpes zoster, is a typical dermatomal involvement and it needs systemic and topical antivirals for the treatment. And Hutchinson signs to be remembered in a PG course, that is the involvement of the tip of the nose can lead to corneal involvement. The common cutaneous wart or the varico vulgaris is caused by human papillomavirus. It just presents as an elevated irregular papillomatous surface. Just we can excise it so easily. One of the common epithelial tumors are squamous papilloma. It can be single or multiple, involving the lid margin or the lid skin, and the histology has a fibrovascular core. Cutaneous horn, on the other hand, is just a packed keratin, which is due to a variety of underlying lesions ranging from seborrheic keratitis to SCC. Hence, excision biopsy is a must, including the epidermis. Seborrheic keratosis has a just stuck-on appearance, and the HPE shows either a horn cyst or a pseudo-horn cyst. Keratoacanthoma, common on immunosuppressive patients, has a rapidly growing face, stationary face, regressive face, and a completely regressed face, but leaves an ugly scar with a cicatricial ectropion. Since it forms a spectrum of SCC, it has to be completely excised. The others are actinic keratosis, which is the pre-malignant skin lesion, the common epidermal inclusion cyst following trauma, and the dermoid cyst commencing since birth. Coming to the adnexal tumors, we have the sebaceous gland tumors, the commonest being milia, which is nothing but occlusion of the pilosebaceous unit with keratin, the cyst of Zeiss, the eccrine gland tumors, and the apocrine gland tumors, the commonest being the cyst of Moll, which is brilliantly transilluminant. The hair follicle tumors are the trichoepithelioma, which is a predilection to the eyelids, and they can be multiple and enlarges since adolescent age. Trichofolliculoma is a well differentiated and has a typical central umbilication and small white hairs protruding from the center of the lesion. The tricholemoma arises from the outer sheath, and the nose is the most common site and not the eyelid. Multiple tricholemomas can be a part of Cowden's disease. Pilomatrixoma arises from the hair bulb or the matrix and is also known as calcifying epithelioma. Coming to the vascular tumors, capillary hemangioma is the commonest of all, and 1 to 2% of the infants have this condition. Girls predominate the spectrum. It can be present at birth, which rapidly grows in the first 2 years and resolves by 7 years. So here we have a child at 3 months and 3 years with spontaneous regression. We have a strawberry nevus. It can be subcutaneous lesion with a purple spongy mass or a deep orbital lesion without any skin lesion and only proptosis. It can lead to amblyopia. The systemic association of Kasabach-Merritt syndrome and Maffucci syndrome had to be borne in mind. Microscopically, all the feces can be differentiated. The treatment is a whole range, starting from observation, propranolol, to systemic steroids, and even surgical excision. Pyogenic granuloma is the common acquired vascular lesion occurring after trauma or in association with chalazion. Since it's fast growing and bleeds readily on touch, it has to be surgically excised. Cavernous hemangioma, unlike capillary, is uncommon in the lids. Lymphangioma may involve the lid, especially when there is an associated bleeding to it. Neurofibroma is very common either as an isolated swelling or as a part of NF1 spectrum, plexiform neurofibromatosis with a classical bag of worm appearance on palpation. The commonest xanthomatous lesion would be xanthelasma, oftenly associated with hyperlipidemia and microscopically having the xanthoma cells in the dermis. The others would be juvenile xanthogranuloma and fibrous histiocytoma in the spectrum. Coming to the melanocytic tumors, normally the melanocytes are in the dermis. When they are found in the epidermis, it is abnormal. So based on the histological locations, they are classified into intradermal, junctional, or compound. Intradermal, they just come near the epithelium, and there can also be kissing nevus, that is symmetrical involvement of the upper lid and the lower lid, and it has no malignant potential, whereas junctional nevus and compound nevus has a low malignant potential for. So my take-home messages would be recurrent chalazion, beware of meibomian gland carcinoma. Remember the Hutchinson signs in varicella zoster, that is when the tip of nose is involved, there is more chance for corneal involvement. In molluscum contagiosum infection, the appearance will be a typical umbilicated nodule, and on HPE there will be molluscum bodies. Any cause of unilateral follicular conjunctivitis, which is not getting treated with the regular treatment, look for the lids for an unusual cause. Cutaneous horn always has to be excised due to the underlying condition. And capillary hemangioma, depending on the condition, either we observe or treat.
1 minute remaining, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm just finishing. We just observe or treat depending on the type of the capillary hemangioma. Thank you for patient listening.
Thank you very much. That was a wonderful synopsis which you gave us in 7 minutes. Will you stop sharing your screen? Yeah. So I have a general ophthalmologist question for Dr. Milan before Vidya goes on to serious stuff. So Dr. Milan, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. No, so what a very basic question is, what is the accuracy of a clinical diagnosis in a benign lesion? That based on that alone, you could go ahead. The second small bit of that extension is that there are some of these benign looking lesions for cosmesis which you would remove. Would you advise that all of them be sent for biopsy, or a clinical diagnosis would suffice?
Yeah, nice questions, doctor. Answering the second one, yes, everything that
We can't hear you.
Hear you, sir. There's a lot of disturbance, Dr. Milan.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So, answering the second question first, everything that we remove should be sent for biopsy, and because we would want to know what it is. Oftentimes, the insurance requires that if you posted it for a biopsy, they would request a report. And coming to the first question, based on the clinical findings, in around 80% of cases, we would be sure if we were labeling it as benign or malignant. And 20% cases, we will get a surprise. So exactly the concerns that were mentioned in the first talk those are the areas where we have to be particularly careful about, the most notorious being chalazion and sebaceous gland carcinoma.
So that was a very safe answer, but keeping in view our country and the financial aspect behind it all, I mean, does
Right.
it make sense to do a biopsy for some very routine lesions? See, you are leaving a message for the entire AIOS.
Well, a biopsy wouldn't cost much, the histopathology.
Yes, true.
And my recommendation as an oculoplastic surgeon, also representing our society, would be that you would excise everything and it should go to the pathologist rather than the dustbin, no matter how sure you are. Well, in a given case, if you've discussed this with the patient and don't want to spend on biopsy, and the patient agrees to take that risk, I would say you can go ahead and avoid sending it to pathologist. But in the absence of that, it's better to.
Makes sense. Vidya?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Millen, for that crisp and clear message. And thanks, Jay Gayatri, for highlighting the most common benign lesion that affect the eyelids. That was quite comprehensive. Majority of the eyelid condition for which a patient come to the hospital remains chalazion, and the most common misdiagnosed and masquerades also seems to be the chalazion. When it comes to the treatment aspect of it, we all agree that majority of these cases can be treated conservatively. When do you exactly plan for a biopsy in a case of chalazion? That's my first thing. And what is your treatment preference? Like whether will you be going for a intralesional steroid or INC in most of the cases?
I would at least wait for 6 weeks to 2 months before doing an incision in curettage, and I prefer INC over intralesional steroids. But when it recurs on the same site the second time, I definitely go for a biopsy. Or on table, if I don't have the typical cheesy material, I find a firm feel, then I resort to biopsy at the same instant.
Okay. Okay, and any intralesional steroids, Dr. Millen, your inputs, and being a cataract surgeon, many of these lesions also require treatment before cataract surgery. So how long should you wait for the regression to happen? Like if you do INC or if you do intralesional steroids?
I would say that if it started off as a sty, which was an acute infection, and now it's turned into a chalazion, which is a painless nodule, technically you are dealing with a granuloma, not an infective focus. But I believe that as a cataract surgeon, you are overcautious. So you could reduce that by giving an intralesional steroid injection or even curettage, as madam said. And once you are sure about you being comfortable doing the cataract surgery, you can go ahead. There is no baseline ground rule. I think each surgeon has a different level of apprehension with regards to chalazions around the eye when it's cataract.
No. Chalazion, if it is sitting in the lower lid, I think if you're sure it's nothing, why bother? But maybe up the upper lid and it can cause astigmatism, then yes, it could have an impact on our IOL power calculation biometry. So that, yes, then we would do it.
Absolutely.